Okay, Itameksistiko, good day. It is the afternoon of Friday, October 27th, 2017, in the lunar cycle Itotstoi, when the cold arrives, the first winter moon. I'm out here at Sspopiikimi just to do a quick walk around, see what's happening, and gonna drop down into the forest main and spend some time with the cottonwoods. Cottonwoods are going to be the first of 12 species that I'm going to be learning from more intensely over the next 2 years in a research project I've devised or am devising as I go along. That's why I had the present and the past tense together. I'm devised. One of the first things I'll say about the cottonwood is that, and I've said this before, I'm sure, this is one of the things that the beavers do with it. Their food cache here. You can see a difference between last time I stopped here. They have now cottonwood boughs with the bark chewed off, pitched on top of their winter food cache and weighing it down. So I'm going to be looking at the cottonwoods and for a full year and looking at all of their ecological relationships. But yeah, it's a nice day out here. Just yesterday, North Pond was frozen over. Just a thin sheet of ice, but it was -3 at dawn, and it had been in the sub-zero temperatures throughout most of the night, I think, and so you got that thin layer of ice. This is kind of typical for the first winter lunar cycle. Should start getting waves of more extreme cold in the next cycle, and then after that we go into the real winter. The depth of winter. Misamiko komiato is the long night's moon. Yeah, anyway, I'm just going to take a little walk around. As you saw, the turtles are out. They're not actually basking above water, but they are floating at the tops with their heads out, some of them. And lots of Canada geese and mallards and American widgeons still on site. Haven't seen a yellowlegs for I think 2 weeks now. And I think I've heard a killdeer in that time frame, but I haven't seen one. Yesterday spotted the first bald eagle that I've seen recently here at the pond. They tend to hang around most of the winter, so that was different. Not seeing as many little robin flocks the last bit. I think maybe a week ago was probably the last one I saw down here for smaller birds, mainly just waxwings. But yeah, I just do a quick walk around and then go into the forest and spend some time with the trees. Been walking a while and hadn't seen any insects. And then right here is this one little white tufted prairie aster, still in bloom. And you have a little, I don't know if this is a fly or a bee visiting it. I know I've run into this guy before, I just can't remember who it is. I think he's a bee. Perhaps not. Well, I'll figure it out before I post this video anyway. Yeah, so just coming down the path amidst the choke cherries on the southeast end of the pond, and I noticed there is this beetle who's active here. I'm sure I've encountered this beetle before, just like that fly back there, but I'm gonna have to go back and look at my notes to learn who it is again. I've lost track. Okay, here I am amidst them. Amidst some of my teachers for the next year on this new project, this new learning experiment. So, where to begin? I guess right now just kind of trying to perceive them in that manner as my potential instructors today. I guess it's a little bit overwhelming, a little bit intimidating. Like, where do you even begin? I know one of the things that I want to do, which is important to do, but not necessarily at the heart of the relationship building, is to look at all of the connections. Like with the beaver lodge, the beavers are using wood from the cottonwoods right now to weigh down their food cache. So how are other plants and animals using the cottonwood right now? And then tracking how that changes in each lunar cycle through the year. What are all the different plants and animals that connect to the cottonwood, and in what way? Like, you know, who uses cottonwood as perching for hunting? Who uses cottonwood as perching for display? Who uses cottonwood to nest in? Who digs nest cavities inside of the cottonwood? Who uses cottonwood material in their nests that aren't necessarily nesting in cottonwood trees? Like, I know the yellow warblers out here use that cotton from the seed as part of their nesting material. I think the catbirds use some of the cambium from the bark. You know, all of the different relationships. That's something I want to look at. Some little insect, some little gnat-like insect flying around. But yeah, and even, you know, even what's out here on the understory. You know, the tall goldenrod, the brome and other species of grass that grow in the understory. You know, what grows with the cottonwoods. Yeah, trying to kind of pay attention, like what's going on right now. Of course, we just had a lot of windstorm the last little while. We had some serious windstorm, and a week and a half ago there was still quite a few leaves on the trees and the canopies in this forest. It had dropped probably 5/8 of its leaves, but it still had 3/8 up there. And that couple of days of intense wind knocked all of that down. And so now the leaves are on the ground, and I'm, you know, obviously they're going to be serving different purposes there. Right? So it's going to be insect life and invertebrate life of different kinds, and small mammal life under and in those leaves to look at. There's going to be similar small invertebrate life to look at in the bark or in the dead fall, you know, or in cavities. Yeah, there's lots to think about in that regard, but I also want to get at, you know, get a feel for the trees as beings, because I know that they're very old, hey? Very old. Even though they say that they can live, you know, 80 to 125 years, something like that. That's just the most recent stalk that they're talking about. You know, what we see above the ground is tree. But every time you cut one of those down, you know, like the beavers do, they cut down the stalk, and then you can see, like the phoenix, the cottonwood grows back out of the stump. You get another tree starting where the old one passed. Don't see very many helicopters around here. So yeah, I'm just gonna turn off the camera for a little bit and pay some attention, spend some time here, and then I'll turn the camera back on when something's coming to me, or when I notice or observe something. One thing that is important to notice, we have all this dead wood on the ground. And this is indicative of something. I wouldn't have thought about it, except I was working with some of my students from Red Crow College a couple of years back, designing a permanent exhibit for the Helen Schuler Nature Center here in Lethbridge. And we were talking about that park on the other side of the river, Indian Battle Park, and how we might go about doing more kind of public education around Blackfoot knowledge pertaining to that park and the ecology there. And one of my students, who's an elder for the Horn Society and Blood Tribe, pointed out, well, taking a walk around in the park, there's all of this deadwood, you know. There's piles of deadwood all over the place. Some of it brought in by floods, and some of it just from, you know, fallen branches and trees. And for thousands of years in the past, at least in recent thousands of years, you would not find that, you would not see that in these riparian environments here in this area, because the human beings would be living down here, and we would be collecting that dead wood for firewood. And so, you know, and it actually goes like his suggestion was that we clean it up, you know, clean up the dead wood in the forest, and it actually goes against contemporary conservation ethics, which hold that you know, that the insect life and small mammal life and such need that dead wood here in order to you know, in order to proliferate and be well as species. But that is probably not the case, because in reality, for thousands of years, all this deadwood would have been collected. These trees, there's three species here, by the way. and they all interbreed, so they're more like subspecies. And in fact, in the Blackfoot language, they're just called Sspopiikimi. They're all called the same thing. These were the firewood in the past, because they don't crackle and send sparks up into your lodge, and they don't have a lot of smoke. So this was the preferred firewood, but you didn't cut down live trees for fires. You collected the dead wood, and in fact, women, I've seen pictures of women using crooked sticks, crooked poles to pull down dead branches from the tops of trees, because all the stuff in this understory, unless there was a recent windstorm, would have been picked over for firewood, you know. So I'm just noticing that about this forest. Not that it's, you know, wrong or anything to have the deadwood, but it is indicative of the absence of a certain relationship. These are the berries from star-flowered Solomon seal. Another one of the plants in the understory. I was just stopped here at this stump, cottonwood stump, beside the area that I call the cathedral, that has these trees that arc over on each other. I thought I would check just a little bit under the bark of this stump to see who all is under there. Problem with doing this is you expose whoever's under there to having no shelter. So it is kind of an intrusive thing. It is a warm day, on the other hand, right? So it's not like there's a lack of opportunity to climb back in. I don't know. Notice that there's a mushroom species, not current, you know, but you can see these mushrooms along the seam here. Old. Gee, already you see egg sacs. That's a pretty big egg sac right there. That might be, oh, I can't even tell. It looks kind of like something that I've incubated to term before, but I don't think it's the exact same. Here we have another one. They may have already hatched out of these. This looks old. Oh. You can see, of course, the evidence of poplar borer beetle larvae. They would have, in these large holes on the outside here, is where they would have pupated into adults. Either the poplar borer beetle or the flathead beetles. Oh, somebody's dog is here. Running through the forest. Some peoples. Back to business here. You can see this is an area where a woodpecker was pulling out some of the beetle borer larvae for feeding. Well, that is the last bit I'll take off of here. More large egg sacs. Egg sacs. Yeah, and just evidence of boring. That's about it. So I'm sure there's more to be seen under the bark here, but I don't want to take all the bark off of this one stump. Just sitting on the floor of the cathedral, taking it all in, and not by coincidence, I chose to sit in a shaded space. That shade is something that is provided by the trees. It is starting to warm up, and I wore a jacket, and I was starting to feel warm in my jacket from the sun. And so thinking that I just wanted to sit here for a bit and, you know, just sit and visit. That methodology, we visit. So given that I wanted to sit, I had to choose. There's a kind of a fallen log that many times during the summer I like to sit on, or if Mahoney and I come out here together, she'll want to stop and sit there looking into the cathedral. But in the middle of summer, we had a canopy of leaves for shade, and right now that log is completely exposed to the sun. So I chose not to sit on the log, but rather to sit in the shade at the base of one of the clumps of cottonwood trees. So the cottonwoods provide a shield from the sun, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that takes advantage of that shield. They also can provide a shield from other kinds of inclement weather, you know, shield from rain at times, I'm sure, shield from hail, shield from heavy winds. Yeah, their use as a shield, and this reminds me, especially the use of a shield in the manner of a shield against the heat of the sun. This reminds me in particular of the Blackfoot tradition of using a little stick to put in front of yourself if you're smoking, to shield people who are passing by you from, you know, being hit in the eyes with your smoke and such. Yeah, certain people in Blackfoot ceremony are not supposed to have people walk in front of them when they smoke. So using that shield, again, it reminds me of the shielding from the sun. This is something that the cottonwoods do for probably many organisms that I hadn't even considered until just now. Yeah, come to think of it, in regards to shields, these riparian cottonwood forests would be the places to camp during the winter lunar cycles, like we're in now, hey? People start camping down in the coulees like this because it's shielded. You know? I'm also considering that aspect of the cottonwood defense system that leads to the production of firewood, which is basically cottonwood's way of dealing with rough times, is to shed you know, pieces of itself, to drop, you know, go ahead, kill this branch, I'll drop that, you know, or put too much pressure on this part of me, and they seem to have, you know, their branches are kind of made to pop off when a certain amount of force is applied, and especially if they're dry, you know, and the dry ones can pop off without wounding the tree. Like the tree is just fine. So they've got this kind of a defense in their favor. Not quite like the willow that bends, right? Cottonwood is almost like the willow. They're very closely related. And it does bend, but it has a point of give, and it's come up with a system for allowing that give without really traumatizing the body. And when it gives, it really gives, because then it's giving part of its body to other things, including our firewood and including different uses by invertebrates and small mammals at the ground level. Just working on liberating one of these trees from the chicken wire. It's been wrapped around its base. This is some of my reciprocation for the learning that I'm doing. And I know this stuff is put here by people with good intentions in some respects. They're trying to keep the trees from being knocked down by beavers. And so there is a kind of a save the forest message behind this, or purpose behind this. But personally, I think it's I kind of feel like it's disrespectful to the whole eco-social system out here. I mean, the beavers know very well what they're doing. If it wasn't for the beavers, these forests wouldn't exist. The beavers create the backwaters that these forests, these riparian forests, cottonwood forests, need to survive. The relationship between the beavers and these forests is long. And you know, when it comes to the beavers, there's so much the architect of life. We're not there yet, right? When we have thousands of species flourishing because of the way that we live, when we are progenitors of, if that's the right word, of biodiversity, then maybe we can doubt the beavers and what they're doing. But right now, we're out of that league. We're not there. So I feel like this is, I don't know, it's a little bit of a slap in the face to the beavers and probably to the trees as well. This is not the tree's nature, as I've been noticing today. The tree's nature is really to give. And anything that's up here above ground that it ends up giving, it's not the end of the tree. That's just what it has to offer to everybody else, you know, as well as, you know, at the same time serving some of its own ends. So yeah, I figure removing some of these trappings is a little way that I can begin paying back the forest.